Welcome to another episode of Scary Stories with Kalila. I am Kalila Smith, and joining me and Alan Gilbreth tonight, we have a very special guest. My dear friend and fellow demon hunter is Nathan Schoonover. Welcome, Nathan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. How are you, Kalila?
I'm well. Great to see you as always. And I'm so excited to have you on the show. We, of course, had Nathan on when we had a podcast, and that was a lot of fun. But here we are on TV and ready to hear about your scary stories. And I think out of everybody I know in the paranormal world, this guy probably has some of the scariest, creepiest stories than anyone. Um, One in particular, he even invited me to, and I was like, no, that's even too over the edge for me. We're not. I can't be involved in this. So, so Nathan,
I've paid the
everybody.
price for all of them, believe me,
Yeah,
Kalila.
I know. I mean, give us a little. For those who don't know which shows you've been on, let's give them a little background on yourself, and then start. Go right into your scary stories. Because I think the best one was, well, it's a toss up. The fire or the swamp. The swamp story is fabulous, but
Well, historically, I have been on. I started on Ghostly Talk Radio, went to Ghostman and Demon Hunter show, where I was the host with Sean Burris. We then did the television show Extreme Paranormal. At that same time, I was also doing work for FearNet.com for their. Where did I go after that? I have done what's the big one that Paranormal Challenge with Zach Baggins did that.
right, yeah.
Um, Went on from there and did some. They made a few episodes about me on others like monsters and whatever, but they don't need the actual person that was involved with that. They make that all up on their own. Uh, but yeah, we Sean and I have been all over the place, and it all started many years ago when I decided I was getting divorced. Great time in your life to decide you need to go out and do something different. When you're getting divorced and are willing to do just about anything to get away. Uh, so, and my ex-wife was more than happy to send me off to do dangerous things. So I went out and started my decision. I got into this because I honestly didn't care if there were ghosts or not. It weird in this whole group mentality to say, I don't care. My whole premise was to come out there and find out, why do people believe that there are ghosts out there? Whether there were or not did not matter to me. Whether or not they thought there were ghosts and what they thought those ghosts were, and why some people thought they had a ghost in their house and some people thought they had a demon in their house, that's what I wanted to know. And I thought the best way to figure this out was to find out what people thought ghosts were. And that all wrapped down to what their belief systems were. Because if you have somebody who's living in the jungle and has never talked to anybody about the spirit world, they have their own core mentality of what they think life is and death is. But once you put people into a group, that group affects not just the way they think about this life, but the next. And I started traveling around, and I'd go and live with witches, and I'd go and stay at a Buddhist monastery, and I'd sit down and actually let the Jehovah Witnesses in and talk to me. Whoever I could talk to, I would go out and talk to them, and that's how the whole study started. And that led to my being somehow known as an occultist and working with John Zaffis, the demonologist. And one thing I can say is, if you ever want to see two total differences of opinion, put an occultist and a demonologist in the same room, because they have nothing in common. Because the occultist is totally interested in what the other person's belief is, and it has nothing to do with mine. And the demonologist totally needs it to be his belief system. because otherwise what he's going to do doesn't work. So
Makes sense.
when these were all things I tried to bring out on the radio. I tried to bring out on television. It led us to do Extreme Paranormal, which was an awesome. Kalila, I'm sorry. Are there like trees blowing in the wind behind you? Sorry.
It is a dark and stormy night out there.
It is a dark and stormy night there.
Yes,
story.
we've got like a tropical storm going on behind me. Yes.
So I'm just waiting for the trees to come flying through there.
Yeah.
I was waiting on a little dog to go by the window.
Lady on a bicycle.
No, what you're gonna have is a raccoon looking through the window, waving at you. You know.
But we went out there and we decided to do Extreme Paranormal, and we had written with Drew Brown from Brown Entertainment the most hysterical paranormal show of all time. We were going to go out and not necessarily debunk stuff, but the idea was you're always told on ghost hunts, don't do this, don't call the demon by its name. Don't do magic in like a place that's had black magic done there. Don't do this, don't do that. And we said, let's go in and do everything that you're not supposed to do. And, the original promo was called Playing with Fire. And there's a great scene in it where I'm drawing a pentagram around Jason Gowan in the sand. And, and he looks up to me and goes, is this a regulation pentagram? And I had to stop myself from laughing on the camera. But then we went to A&E, and A&E said, we love absolutely everything you guys are doing. Just stop being funny.
Oh.
And, if you're going to do this crazy, obnoxious, and downright fun stuff, and then act like you are totally serious about it, you are going to get the greatest pile of hate mail you have ever seen in your life. I got death threats. It was just ridiculous stuff, like people telling me that I had poisoned the paranormal world and I should be poisoned myself. And I went and said, et tu, Brute?
Wow.
It was just, but it was fabulous to do this stuff. I just wish we could have done it our way. And I mean, I got to hand it to Ryan from Paranormal State, because I was on right after his show. And everybody was texting him on his webpage saying, I guess it was texting, whatever you called it back then, messaging or whatever, and saying, what do you think of this show, Extreme Paranormal? And Ryan was just like, haven't watched it. Now, come on, it was on right after his show, and he was getting paid by the same network as me. He saw it. He was just being nice. He just didn't want to get into the arguments with everybody. But everybody else, every other show out there came off and said, these guys should be like drawn and quartered. And meanwhile, we got enough hate mail. We met the ratings that A&E wanted. But the problem was we were on a network whose average viewership was 22 to 45. And then the next group was 45 to 65. And we had the largest number of 15 to 21-year-olds that A&E had ever seen in their life. And when you're doing television, you don't want to sell a product for people from 22 up to a group of people who are 15, so they couldn't get advertisers for us. So we met the ratings. We didn't meet the statistics. And rubber baby buggy bumpers. There we go. And when that was all, so we got canceled. Meanwhile, 2 years later, we're watching other ghost hunting shows, and they're all doing this stuff that we had been doing 2 years earlier that they were completing. So, we had great ideas that never got to be seen. We wanted to do a show in a bar. We had found a bar where the ghosts supposedly harassed drunk people. So we wanted one guy to film Sean and I having a drinking contest and see if the ghosts attack. We were thinking free booze. It's on the company's money. But that,
Nathan, I love how you think, man. I love how you
I
think.
knew you would love this guy. I told you, you're gonna love this guy.
Oh my gosh.
You're gonna love this guy.
Nathan, why weren't we doing a show together? Oh my Lord.
There you go. There you go, Alan.
It's
There you
We
go.
could have
another
debunked new math, man. Come on.
We've
But come
already
on, you know.
debunked new math. You know, all you have to do is like challenge any high school kid who learned new math to
No.
like times 3 digits together, and you're done in 5 seconds, and they're still adding up the third quarter.
No, just put an old-fashioned clock on the wall and ask them what time it is.
If you
Now,
if you want
Nathan,
an if you want to save
have
your
been-
what's
Go
that?
ahead.
I'm sorry. It's your show, and I'm taking over.
No.
This
Go
happened just
ahead.
before.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go with it.
No, I was just gonna say all you have to do to protect your car nowadays is get it a stick shift, and nobody's gonna steal it.
Yeah,
Because
nobody
they
can
can't-
touch that.
Nope.
Nobody can. I can't drive a stick shift, and I'm old. No, I was going
Well,
to
it's
ask you.
debatable
some
whether or
of
not
these
you can
things-
drive. You aim well.
My wife decided that she was going to marry me the day we had our first date, and I drove her stick shift home, and she was like, "He can drive stick. He's the one." You know, so
He's a keeper.
You can chew gum and walk down the street at the same time. Oh my gosh.
That is awesome. But come on, some of those things, I know some of this stuff had to scare you. I mean, you know, weren't you scared? I mean, I don't know how many people out there watching, I'm sure they're familiar with the show. I'm sure they got to know the episode. Were you not scared in that jail, when you did the jail cell thing?
You know, I actually took a nap in that jail cell that night.
Yes.
The producers were furious with me because they came in and found me napping in the cell right next to it on what must have been like a 20-year-old rubber mattress. And they're like, "Do you know what's probably living in that mattress?" And I said, "Probably the same thing living in my shirt now." And they were grossed out. They wouldn't have anything to do with this. I did have a horrible rash the next day, but that was the worst part of that. Interesting things happened there. We decided that at that jail cell, since people had reported things happening, as I was talking to Alan a little earlier together as we were setting all this up, I work in the pest control industry and wildlife. And my brother is actually a state pesticide regulator for South Carolina. So heaven help our family when Thanksgiving rolls around, because you know what we're talking about at the dinner table. And not ghosts. So when we were getting to ready to film Extreme Paranormal, my brother and I were talking about this great study that was out there working with aphids, where they were spreading saline on the soil and then adding an electric charge to bring the aphids to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there with my brother and saying, you know, people say that electrical charges affect ghosts too. So why don't we spray a room down with saline and electrically charge the room? So, of course, we took our guinea pig, Jason Gowan, and stuck him in the room and sprayed the room. We sprayed the room with saline first, stuck him in the room, and then set a Jacob's ladder up in the middle of it,
Oh,
like 10,000 volts through the room. And while we were doing it, we said, you know, the guy who died in this cell, the inmates had gotten a hold of tools and cut through the bars. So why don't we get electric drills or saws and cut through the bars while we were at it? Well, we couldn't get permission to cut through the bars, so we actually built a door, replaced the original door with a new door we built, and cut through that. Meanwhile, the Jacob's ladder is going crazy. Jason's hair is standing up to here, and his hair is only this long because he's in a room full of saline. And, you know,
Jacob ladder.
he's having a panic attack. He's like, I think something's jumping on me. I'm like, no, that's probably just the Jacob's ladder pumping electricity into you, buddy. And we kept going. But we did all this to charge up the room. And then afterwards, we're like, oh, you know, let's look around. And I walk downstairs and I'm talking to the camera guy, and behind me, looking and talking and just going, like, saying all this stuff. And then I realized the camera guy is like 10 feet in front of me on the ledge, looking down at me, filming me. And I turn around and there's just this big black shadow standing behind me. And it went, thoop, and went the other direction. And I was like, oh my God. And everybody comes running down and telling me all about it. And I'm telling them about it. And I'm like, I saw this and this went over here. And they got a picture of like that side of the room from the camera. Then there was definitely a shadow that had passed. And we were all so excited, and they yelled cut, and the producer said, "That's awesome, but you mentioned the camera guy. Can you do it again?" So we had to recreate all that stuff that just happened. I tell people all the time, reality TV isn't scripted, but they redo the same thing so many times in a row that it's not actually real. You're seeing the people it happened to recreate it.
Right.
I ruined reality television for my wife one day when she was watching her favorite show, Josh Gates, doing his Destination Truth, and he drove over a bridge on a motorcycle. And they show him driving over the bridge, and then they see him coming towards the other side, and then there's a shot of him driving this way. And I said, "Honey, you realize they filmed that at least 4 times."
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, they've got 3 different angles. And then you see him like from another angle when he crosses the bridge, which means and you never see a camera, which means he drove across the bridge, drove back. They filmed him again. They drove back. She told me I was never allowed to watch reality television. So it's
like when the guy in the woods walks into the camera frame, does something interesting, and walks out of the camera frame.
Yeah.
What you didn't see was him walking over and setting up the camera, and then going back and walking back in to do something interesting, and then walking off, and then turning around and coming back to get the camera, to turn the camera off, and to undo whatever it is he did, and then, oh my Lord, have mercy.
But to answer your question earlier, Kalila, the scary things that happened on that show, like the swamp. You brought up the swamp. I was more scared of the alligators.
Well, yeah.
Because when we first pitched this show, I said, I want to go out in late February, early March, before alligator breeding season starts.
Mm.
The one thing I don't want to do is go out there in July when it's the middle of alligator breeding season. When did they schedule us to do it? In July.
Mm-hmm.
So we go out to do this, and this is not like fake TV on when you actually see Sean and I going out on the boat and alligators are bumping into our boats. They had a big boat in front of us filming us in our little tiny boat. Literally, they put us in like a rowboat with a motor on it, while the producers are on like a yacht in front of us.
Yep.
And they're filming us, and the alligators are just coming up and knocking into the boat. We found out later that there had been an alligator tour in there, and they used to throw food to the gators, so the gators knew that the boats meant food, so they were coming up wanting food from us. But, we were filming in areas where the camera guys were literally standing on tubalo stumps and cypress knots with alligators coming up behind them while they're filming us on land. And, that was the scariest part of like that. I mean, nature is, forget supernatural, paranormal. Normal is scary enough. It
was scary. I didn't go. He invited me. They actually interviewed me in the early part of the show. You interviewed me, and I said, I'll go to the cemetery in the Garden District. And he said, you want to go to the swamp? And we're going to be doing this in the swamp. We're going to do that in the swamp. And I live in this. It was just like a mile from my house. And I was like, wait, you're going where? And I was like, I love you guys, but I'm not coming out there. There's no way I am coming out in the swamp at night in July. I'll watch it on TV. Thank you. And it was just like, and then I told him, I said, I think this is a real bad idea. I don't think this is a good idea at all. For so many reasons. I just was like, oh dear God, no.
Because I had worked for days with Shane, the voodoo priest, to get ready to do the voodoo ritual. And I went out there to do the voodoo ritual, and so I'm slugging rum in 92 degrees with 86% humidity at 2:00 in the morning, slugging rum, performing this voodoo ritual. You see 15 seconds of ritual on TV. It took me 2 hours to do that whole ritual. And at the end of that 2 hours, I passed out cold at the altar. Now, of course, the voodoo priest says I was visited by a spirit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it may have been Captain
the spirit of molasses passed. Yeah.
Yes, but I landed on a fire ant nest when I fell. And the producers saw these giant fire ants crawling over my face, and they filmed it. Nobody woke me up. So I decided to get even. They said, so what are we going to do to take this a step further? So we had decided to dig a grave and lower a coffin in it and have Jason in a grave next to, because we were filming on top of a mass grave. So we decided to dig to the right, not in the mass grave, that would be disrespectful, but to dig our own grave in the same area, put a coffin down in it, and have Jason be buried alive in the grave. Okay, here's the thing. The coffin we had we realized as we started to do it, wasn't going to hold the weight of this. And after digging the grave, we realized there's no way we're going to dig him out in time if there's a problem. So we went down about a few inches and put down a wooden vault above him to hold all the weight of the dirt off. And just piled the dirt up. So he was buried alive. He was. But he had a lot more air than it looks. Plus, we'd given him an oxygen tank in case there was a problem. And,
so kind of you.
Oh, yeah. And he started hearing scratching inside the coffin. And he started freaking out. So we're like, we got to dig him out of there. He's on the walkie-talkie with us. We got to get him out. So we start digging him out. Now, here's the thing we hadn't considered. Trial and error. When you bury a wooden vault, you can't open it if you can't get to the four edges.
Nope.
And so we kept trying to dig out the vault, but dirt kept falling in. So literally, by the time we got the top of the wooden vault off the top, we started pulling the nails. We jumped into the hole and started pulling the nails out of the coffin. He broke through the coffin. He was so freaked out. And if you watch the TV show, you'll actually see when we bury him in the coffin, the lid is one piece. Afterwards, when they take a picture of it, the coffin lid is split right down the middle. And, I did horrible things to Jason. I really did, because these were mostly my ideas. I wanted to put a snake in the, like a boa constrictor or something like that in the coffin with him, because snakes are very important to voodoo. And he has a terrible fear of snakes. Oh, well, no. They actually wanted to get me to go into the water on another one, and I have fear of dark water. There's actually more than hydrophobia. I can handle water, I just can't handle dark water. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that. We don't have to do the snake with you, Jason. But I thought putting him in the electric room, putting him in the burying him alive. We tied him up in a straitjacket and put him in a room that insane children had been in an insane asylum, and left toys all around him, and the toys started playing, started going off. I mean, we did this stuff to him, and he won't speak to me anymore.
I can't imagine.
Honestly, I don't think any of that is the reason. Just this evening, while I was looking up stuff about the show, I came across an interview that he had done. And what really upset him was he had a experience with people who cut themselves. And in the show, I had come up with this whole idea to do a blood ritual. Now, I had at the time, been working prior to my going there at drawing blood at a clinic. So I was like, what we'll do is we'll go in, I'll draw the blood, and we'll do the blood ritual. Well, we found out that you have to have a certain location to draw blood, because if you don't do it in a certain location, it's illegal in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And also, if you don't have the right license for that state, it's illegal. And if the blood's not used for scientific or for medical testing, it's illegal. So we weren't allowed to draw the blood. So I said, okay, I have this beautiful silver ritual knife that was gifted to me. I will bring it, and we will use that to perform the ritual. Well, flying from place to place to place, the knife got stolen out of my luggage.
Of course it did.
Yep. So we get to, and they're not going to let me carry it on the plane, so it had to be in my luggage. Even back then, it was post 9/11. You couldn't carry a knife on a plane. So I basically told the producers, we've got to find a new knife. It doesn't have to be like my beautiful ritual knife, but we have to find one that will look good for the show. And they said, well, go out and try and find something. They gave me half a day in the middle of like Arizona to find something that I needed. And I don't know any of the stores. I'm driving around town looking in every shop I can find that's got like a pyramid on the front of it, or a butterfly, or like a magic rocks, whatever you want. And nobody's got something I can use. And I called the producer. I'm like, I can't find anything. And they said, don't worry, we've got it covered. So we get to the site that night, and I go to be like, all right, I need the knife. And they're like, they hand me a box of razor blades. And they're like, I'm like, this is not how you perform a ritual. And, one thing they don't tell you when you get into TV is you either do what the producers tell you or you are in big trouble. So like I said, I worked with blood for years. I had no problem with cutting myself. I wasn't happy about the razor blade, but I performed the ritual. And poor Jason, I looked at his face while I was doing it, and you could just see him go white. And I honestly think that to this day that's why he can't have anything to do with me, because all he can see is that image of me cutting my wrist on national television, making it look like this is okay. I got letters from moms whose kids were cutters saying, how could you do this? I'm like, ma'am, was not my intention. I'm sorry, but it just, things snowball. And if you can't, and even at the end of it, I could have done everything right. In the end, it was going to be edited whatever way they wanted anyway. So that's how that stuff happens. I mean, we figured we'd done too much to Jason. So we hooked poor Sean up to electrodes and put him into a psych ward where they'd done shock therapy, and put an EMF meter in the next room. And every time the EMF meter went off, he got an electric shock.
Oh.
So it was, we did a ritual on open water where I performed the ritual the way I was taught the ritual. And in the middle of the ritual, a microburst hit us. And the magical circle that I had designed, but they did not build to my specifications, started to break apart during the ritual. So we had to end that one. And as soon as we ended it, the storm ended. Meanwhile, Sean was down underwater, and something either grabbed him or snagged him. For the skeptic, I will guarantee you, he could have been snagged. It was underwater, and he couldn't get back up. So, I mean, everybody faced horrible danger. The only thing that I did was the risks I took was performing the voodoo ritual on top of an anthill. I did almost light myself on fire.
That's what I'm talking about. When you lit yourself on fire, I remember sitting on my sofa and I'm watching, and it was very cliche. I even had the popcorn. I'm eating the popcorn, and I'm like, okay, let's see what the boys are doing now. And as this is happening, I was just sitting there like this. And it was like, I knew you guys were edgy, and I was like, I can't believe that they're actually, and it's like, okay, they got to be doing a fake fire. And I see the fire going, and I was just sitting there like.
to give you some idea, Alan, we were in a prison where one of the inmates had, the other inmates had dumped peanut oil on top of him and lit him on fire. So what we did was I laid down in an area either where he was or near where he was, where there was a stain on the floor in the shape of a body. I got in the fetal position. They drew my body out in the white chalk line, covered it with, I stood up in the line. They covered it with oil and lit the fire around me. And, I got out of the fire before I caught on fire, but, I was in the fire, and that was right. It was actually kind of between that and the Jason thing that we actually saw the shadow person. So that you gotta, if you're there to say you're gonna do what shouldn't be done, you gotta do what shouldn't be done. It's like
You're the king of what shouldn't be done,
You
definitely.
know, my claim to fame is to go look for the alligator, flip over the boat. You know, everybody goes, yeah, we saw something, and they run that way. I start walking towards it. It's like,
I actually had being that you do wildlife as well, Alan, and I do. I
mm,
actually had one recently where a bear walked between my truck and the client's house, and the client was this little old lady who was working in her garden in the front of the house. So my first thought, I didn't honk the horn, I didn't pull out my bird banger gun, nothing. I jumped out and started chasing the bear, and the bear ran away.
well, the one
and
thing and on this, I'm going to throw out a little piece of advice for deviant psychology, paranormal, and animal control. All right, because they all three have the same advice. When you do something non sequitur, when you do something unexpected, things do not know how to react to you. It pops up and is like, I'm the bear, you're supposed to run from me. And when you start, screaming like an orangutan and start running straight at it, it kind of goes, nope, 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 nope. Need to get away from you. Need to
at
be
the
away from
very
you.
least, the bear was thinking, if I eat him, he's going to taste funny.
Yeah, it's not going to go well. Um, Nathan, I have an animal story for you. I'll keep it somewhat brief, but it began with you have a demon in your attic, right? That's the call. And it was a call from a pest control company because they had put a raccoon trap in the attic of a 4-story house in Midtown. Beautiful trees, turn of the century houses. It's just, it's as Kalila and I, we argue over where people live. This was a Scooby-Doo level 7. Just to see Nathan understands perfectly. The big trees, the old house, everything. Well, they had left the door, the pull chain and the attic stairs open so that they could go get their trap, and something threw their trap out of the attic. So
Okay.
I get the phone call. You go get it. So we go up there, looking around, and of course, you work with animals, and when you tell people your sense of smell, when you are dealing, whether you are dealing with the paranormal, you're dealing with old construction, or you're dealing with critters, your sense of smell is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And Nathan, you know what a raccoon nest smells like.
Yes, I do.
Now, the average person, I wouldn't expect Kalila to understand that, because Kalila doesn't go climbing around in attics looking for stuff like this. No. So I get up there, and obviously somebody has moved in, right? So a couple of days of this back and forth, nothing touches the trap or anything like that. So I get told whatever's in the attic, the haint, the demon in the attic, is moving around up there. Come on over. So I get there, I have an assistant with me, and I figured if it was active, because it was late in the afternoon, it was almost evening. So I put on the shin guards and the chest protector and the little umpire cap and the big elk-hide gloves, because I figured whatever it is, me and it, we're about to dance. Get upstairs, and about 4 feet off the ground, because it's also kind of a dark and stormy afternoon, so the light has already faded, and about 4 feet off the ground were the two, I cannot tell you how stereotypical the two glowing red dots were. And they're about 4 feet off the ground. And, you're looking at this, and you're just going, oh, here we go. I don't know what this is, but we about to dance, because it's going to happen. All right, Nathan, you're going to love this. After a numerous of boxes and stuff have been tossed and lots of scurrying and lots of racket in the attic. And keep in mind, the owner of the house and my assistant are at the bottom of the stairs listening to all this. Notice that no one is offering to come up and help.
Yes, I'm there all the time. I've had the door closed.
Yeah. They are there to call 911 on whoever loses. That's it. Finally, it gets tired of being chased, leaps on top of some boxes, and I have a full-grown male albino raccoon.
Jeez.
Kalila, I would rather see your demon. This is nothing but about 8 pounds of attitude. And it's looking at me like, dude, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to shove you in that box. And I'm looking at him with the same attitude. Dude, I hate to do this to you, but you're going in the box. Right? Let's just say the next 10 minutes of our lives greatly resembled an anime version of a WWE wrestling match.
Oh, God.
Up to and including his big final move to finish the human off, which was running along upside down the attic batting on the roof.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. What he didn't understand was the human was crazier than he was, and leapt up into the air, grabbed the raccoon, and body splashed him under him on the floor. And I am sure somewhere out there is some loving animal protection person that would say that that was cruel and unusual punishment. All I have to say is it didn't slow it down.
Nothing slows down. Yeah.
Somehow or another, I managed to get the living furry La Machine into the box, got the door closed, and of course, you can imagine what the last 10 minutes has sounded like. Let's just say I used a little language my grandmother would not have approved of, and it was probably saying things its grandmother wouldn't have approved of either, loudly. So I get to the top of the stairs and I holler down there. There is nobody at the bottom of the stairs. So I have to drag the animal carrier with me, come all the way down the stairs, all the way down the next 3 flights of stairs to find my brave assistant and the homeowner sitting on the bed of my truck in the front yard. Because they were pretty much of the opinion they were going to see blood.
They were pretty sure you only had a 40% chance, and they were betting they didn't want to be in the house.
Nobody was betting on me. All right, and Kalila, here's the best part. All right, Nathan, the best part of the story for you as an animal person was the animal eventually was donated to a nature center as an exhibition animal because it obviously didn't fear people. You couldn't release it, but because it was an albino, it was so unusual, it wound up on exhibit. His name was given to him by the new proprietor of the rehab center, and he was affectionately called the Exorcist. Kalila, for you, the end of the story is we get the raccoon out, we're wrapping everything up. Sorry about the mess. We'll come back. She's like, honey, don't worry about the attic. We'll straighten that up later. Thank you so much. And then she gives me this last little quote. Dear, we haven't been able to hear the ghost for that raccoon tearing stuff up.
I actually had a house I was inspecting and was up there, and like somebody's like, we hear footsteps in the attic. We hear footsteps. I'm like, well, show me where you hear them. So I go up the attic, and one's pointing over there. She's pointing over there. And I'm taking a stick and poking into the
into
the siding of the insulation, and it's got a little prong on it at the end, so I can pull insulation up. And I pull it out, and out jumped about 6 flying squirrels.
Wow.
And like they landed on every beam all around me. And the woman let out a scream, ran down the steps, and locked the door behind her. With me in the attic, with the flying squirrels going everywhere. And I kind of just walked over and knocked on the door and went, "Hello?" She's like, "I don't want them to get out." I was like, "What about me?" I'm not moving in up here. It's
They're not going to eat me. So,
but yeah, it's the crazy things that happen. I mean, I've been on hunts. I did one where, like I said, I got started in this studying people's beliefs. So
yes.
I would attend different rituals that people held, and I went to this one house. I told Kalila this story where they were holding pagan rituals, and they kept saying they were seeing things. So I'm sitting down there, and I'm a Mason, so I know when they reach a point in the ritual where they're going to do something that the public can't see, they have to. I had to leave, so I go outside to have my cigarette. I smoked back then, and the girl who lived in the house above, the apartment above them, was there, and we're having a smoke. And she's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm with the group downstairs, just doing interviews." And she's like, "Oh yeah," and all of a sudden, the two of us stopped and just watched this thing walk across the lawn. And I thought, "Oh, what the heck was that?" And I look at her, and her jaw is just down to here, and she kind of looks at me, did you see that? Yes, I did. So I jump over the banister and start running across the yard to where I saw it. And as I get to right where I had seen it pass, my foot hit the ground, and it felt like it was stuck, like I couldn't go any further. And I turned around, and that's the last thing I remember. And the next thing I knew was the group that I'd been down interviewing was all sitting around me inside the house, because apparently I'd had like a seizure.
Wow.
Hit the ground, and they said while I was having the seizure, I was yelling, and the girl's husband, Mark, who was huge, he was like a 6'4", 320-pound guy. Apparently, I had grabbed him and thrown him across the room. And Mark and I became friends after that. He was one of my best friends.
Yeah.
Like, any little guy like that who can throw me around, he's my buddy. For years, he would tell people, he's like, "I'm not the one to worry about. Worry about this guy if he gets."
Worry about him. Yeah, worry about him.
But freaky stuff like that happens. Probably a cool, great story. Unfortunately, I can't tell it to you because I don't remember anything that happened.
That is strange. That's very, very strange.
People ask me all the time, "Are you ever afraid?" I'm like, I've survived this far, and like I've been attacked by everything that's paranormal and normal. So what else is gonna happen?
But did you ever find out what it was that you saw walking across the yard?
It was just some kind of shadow. But I mean, we're up in Connecticut here. I mean, this place has more shadow people than it's got like regular people. I think it's second to Gettysburg. Well, honestly, there are very few regular people in Connecticut.
Really?
Being in the South, I would be accused of terrible things to say that. So,
my father was Appalachian Dutch, and my mother was Pennsylvania Dutch. So I'm kind of from hillbilly stock, and I am up here in Yankeeville, folks. It's my brother and I get along much better down south because people will hear us talk and say, "What's that accent?" And we're like, "The hills." It's just the way people talk in the hills. Especially if I get a few drinks in me. My wife loves my accent when I've got a little bit too much in me.
Yeah.
She says all of a sudden I sound like Boomhauer from King of the Hill. But yes, crazy stuff on TV, crazy stuff in real life. The radio show, Sean and I did great things like that. When we first started Ghost Man and Demon Hunter, we would go out and do stuff like stay at haunted hotels. And we tell the people we want to do a live broadcast. So we'd be like, okay, got, we're going to do a live broadcast here on this night. The next night, we're boozing it up because we got the place to ourselves for so we would do these wild and crazy parties while we were ghost hunting, which of course everybody said, you're not supposed to do that. And we're like, well, we're separating the party from the ghost hunt. They're two totally different things.
Yeah.
Totally different, but of course, then I'd be like, well, maybe the ghost doesn't like people who drink. So, then we'd be right back to stage one with the ideas from the TV, shooting shots. If you can't have fun doing it, let's face it, folks, for 90% of us, paranormal investigation is not going to be your career.
No.
Trust me, I do not travel the country anymore looking for ghosts. I mean, I've got a website. If people want to check it out, I haven't updated it in a few years. It's nathanschoonover.com. I mean, I don't even pay for it anymore, so it's got ads on stuff like that they just keep it up there for me. I'm going to update it soon, I think, because I'm not taking as many cases as I used to. I still, consult on cases, but people have to send me the evidence. I'm not going to the locations anymore. I get people calling me from Australia. I'm like, paying for the flight? I don't have $3,000 right now for that. But but we do the radio show. We actually took last year off. Pandemic and everything else kind of led to that. But Sean's still doing regular shows. I'm still doing research. So, nathanschoonover.com is my personal thing if you want to check it out, but shadownation.com. Sean's still doing regular shows. I'm still doing research for it. We're on Facebook. You can find all that stuff there. I just like doing this. This is not a career. I don't think there's anything special about me. People ask me all the time how I got into this. What's awesome about you? What's it? There's nothing different about me than anybody else out there. I'm not a mystic. I'm not a psychic. I'm not a, hypnologist. None of that stuff. I walk into a room. It's like you were saying before. I've been doing this so long that if I walk in a room and I get that feeling, I know either one of two things is going on. Either there's a ghost in that room or this place has really bad feng shui. So, so I look and say, that sofa shouldn't be there. That's why I'm getting this chill right now. Move that sofa. And then I feel better after that. And I'm like, okay, you're not haunted. But no, you check stuff like that out. You check to see if the stairs are too thin or the sofa's blocking the view so you feel trapped. Those are things you do, and those are things you learn, and you get that feeling when you know something's going on as this happens. But honestly, don't plan on making this your career.
Yeah, very few people do. Now, I do have one last question for you there, Nathan. Do you feel ever that in all of these places that you've been in, because you've been in some pretty haunted places that would terrify most people, did you ever feel that something followed you back home?
100%. 100% things have followed me back home, to the point where my wife was like, we were talking to priests, we were talking to people to do cleansing spells on the house and everything else. But yeah, 100%, especially about the year after Extreme Paranormal, either something came back from that show, or one of the other places I hit was Sean doing the show afterwards. Shadow Nation fell up. It was Ghostman and Demon Hunter at the time, but the show fell apart. Like I said, Jason won't even talk to me anymore. My wife was having a horrible time. I got horribly ill. They said it was ehrlichiosis from a tick bite, but basically I was crippled. I had horrible migraine headaches. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. And the tests all came back negative. Every time they tested me, nothing was showing up. But I think they were right, because they gave me the medicine and it went away.
And now you're good. And now you're back to normal and everything.
Horrible arthritis.
Well,
I don't know anybody who works on the dark side of this industry who has perfect health. Trust me.
No, that's true. That's true. I can barely walk anymore. I have horrendous arthritis. Absolutely.
I feel like I didn't get to answer any of your questions. I just told stories. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. No, that's what we're here. We are here for stories. And what's amazing is that what would be terrifying to most people, you actually did well with it. But we have run out of time, so we're going to say goodnight. Thank you so very much. It was so wonderful to see you and so wonderful to have you come on and talk about this stuff with us. Thank you so
Since
much.
the day we first met, Kalila, and we didn't even know we were meeting, I have loved you always.
Oh, you and Sean, you guys were my boys from the very beginning of the paranormal industry. But we're going to say goodnight to everybody, and Alan, thank you for everything you do, and Nathan, always a pleasure. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you join us again next week. Good night.